Hey, everybody. Today on the Agent Excel podcast, we have our guest, Dave Zajdzinski. What's up, Dave?
Dude, what's going on? Nice job on the name. You're in a
Well,
small club that can pronounce that correctly.
well, it's Dave Z to me and always has been, always will be. I actually had to figure out how to say it before we got on this, before we started recording. But Dave Z, everybody, this is who we've got here. So, Dave, I brought you on because I've known you now for a little bit, and you're just a systems and models guy to me. Like, you run a really cool real estate business built on some really basic, but very important models. And so that's why I brought you on. But before we go into that, I want you just to go into your story on why you got into real estate, how long you've been doing this, and just your backstory.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Great podcast, and it's been a great ride. This about a year we've known each other. It's been amazing. But my story is I'm in my 18th year of real estate. Those first 4 years were with the builder, new home sales, right? Making great money, but slave to that system. And it was great. But once the crash happened in '08, I had no choice but to leave because my key wouldn't open the door at my model homes. And I called my sales manager. I'm like, hey man, I can't get into the models. He's like, yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And he's like, hey, we went bankrupt and you lost your job. So that was my start, right? Like baby on the way, like first baby on the way. I'm like, okay, this is fine. We'll pivot. So '08 started my real estate career in the middle of the short sale days, right? So went right into floundering for about 4, 5, 6 months, just trying to figure it out, and then latched onto short sales, and that exploded my career. I think within 4 months of really diving into short sales, I had about 40 listings on the market. Okay. And that just set it. Then my career was kind of set because I got really specialized at what I was doing. But I got into real estate because I wanted to build something and own something. And I was actually on my way to med school. And my wife kind of challenged me, like, are you sure you want to be a doctor? Are you sure this is what we want to do? And we wanted a family, which we now have 5 kids. We have a big family. And she was one that posed like, hey, if you only made X amount of money, would you be a doctor? I'm like, no way. She's like, you'd be a terrible doctor. Go do something else. There's like a million things to do. And I really just had a passion for real estate. I had 3 houses by the time I was 25. So I was already into real estate without being a realtor. So that's kind of my story. So flash forward today, we're 18 years in. I got 11 members on the team, sold about 1,100 houses, and yeah, we run a kind of a different model that I stole from somebody else that let's dive into and let other people steal from me.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So when I met you a year ago, a little over a year ago, it was the showing partner model, and I was going through this, process in my business where I was just getting more leads and buyers than I knew personally what to do with, or even knew how to structure it correctly. And then I heard you on a podcast and you started talking about the showing partner model. I remember being at the gym, man. I was at the gym. I had about 4 or 5 buyers that I had to get around that night. And I just heard the podcast and it sang to my business like heart. And I was like, whoa, I got to reach out to this guy. I reached out to you. I met up with you. We started talking about it. And I'm just an implementer. I need someone to sell me a vision, give me a little bit of a playbook, execute. And it's changed the last year and a half. It just changed the way I function. So let's dive into that. So the showing partner model, let's go into that. How did you explain what it is? How did you even learn about it? How are you executing that right now?
Sure. Yeah. That I learned about to start off with by just a person I latched onto. So I was at a Zillow conference, heard somebody coaching on conversion, and I just grabbed that person and was like, hey, I need your info. And that's somebody now that is a co-owner of a coaching company that I'm with and I mastermind with. And so I'm a big believer, just do what I did, do what you do. Like somebody says something that you need to hear, just grab them. Just reach out and grab them and say, because I don't really have anything that's too original. I'm like you, just kind of implement. And I think that's how it should be. Like, why try to reinvent the wheel? So one day I'm on a coaching call with him and we're talking about other things. And he said, hey, do you guys run the showing partner model? I'm like, what the heck is a showing partner? Like, no idea. And he goes, your top agent on your team, how many homes will that agent sell? I'm like, gosh, she's been with me 6, 7 years, never sells more than about 35 homes. And he goes, she never will. But here we run a model in our own team, and they're in a different part of the market where our top agent sold 147 houses last year on a team. I'm like, that doesn't seem possible. Like, to me, that was like, hearing about the 4-minute mile, we're like, no, your heart will explode, right? Like, early on with that, doctors were like, you can't do it, you'll die. So it really was like, so this is something I got to see. And it got me on an airplane, flew out, spent 3 days with them, and ended up writing a pretty good check to mastermind with them. And now it's my second year masterminding with this group, about probably 40 realtors that are all about your size, my size, and some all the way up to 1,500 home sales a year. And it was really the one key ingredient that all of these businesses were running. I'm like, okay, every market, it's duplicatable, is what I saw. So I took it from a very big team that has been running it for about 5 or 6 years. And there's all these different iterations, but I really latched on to this version that they're doing. And I had the gift of perspective of having done this for 18 years and run a team. And when you juxtapose this model to the typical model, let's call it the MREA, right out of Keller Williams, like going wide with a lot of agents, that model will really can take you to going broke, because you're outsourcing all of your leads, all of your opportunities to people that typically don't convert as well as you do as a rainmaker. But you're also outsourcing your future business, your future referrals. So it really just challenged the current model of growing a team. And because it really outsources a portion of the business that you don't think you can. We can kind of dive into that, but that's where I saw it and implemented it. And I didn't do it for me at first. I gave it to my top agent, and she went from 35 to 59 sales within a year. And I'm like, it's boom. But we learned a lot along the way, because you can't pay and compensate the way you do in smaller markets, out in Scottsdale. That's where we had to kind of stumble through some hires where we misfired, because I was just trying to take a model in a different market without adjusting the compensation. Right.
So you executed it for one of your agents first,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. I was sitting in that place where, like, hey, I'm done with real estate. I've done all these transactions. I just want to own the team. I want to do other things with my time as well. And I was like, yeah, that's for you, but not for me. And now I have 2 showing partners. So, I did pivot back to that, but I first tested it with one of my agents, and then a second one of my agents did it. So it took me a while to kind of buy into it. I shouldn't say buy into it, but just for me, I had to change my identity a little bit, right? Like, I'm a non-producing team leader. Identity had to shift.
Let's talk about the economics of it, because I think, when people are listening to this right now, there's the economics on why we do this, just as we're scaling and we don't have enough time. And there's also the leverage side that we also still want to enjoy, like a quality life. So just
Sure.
from the economic standpoint, so, let's talk about the other ways that, so a buyer comes into your world, let's say a referral, one of your past clients. What are the options that one would have? Like, okay, there's a few options that you have if your cousin sends you a referral. What are those?
Yeah. So the old way of doing real estate, I would say the old way is, you did it yourself until you were just exhausted. Kind of like when you heard that podcast, you were working with so many people, you just stretch yourself thin. And then, in the old model, it was great. Now get a buyer's agent, and you hand off that relationship to a buyer's agent. And then whatever that split is, that was the old way of doing it. And the economic model of that, which is kind of hard to see, is it's typically 2.5, usually 3.5 times greater when you transact your own client. A lot of people think, oh, if I'm a team leader and it's a 50-50 split, well, I get half, they get half. And the reality is you're getting like a third or less, because that commission gets split, and then all of your expenses come out of your own share. So when you just put it on paper, most agents that I speak with, each sale of theirs is worth 3.5 times what a sale would be through their agent. That's the math just doesn't seem to add up, right? Most people are like, no, it's 50-50. So the economics behind it are you're going to keep 3.5 times more of that, retain the relationship, and you can put somebody in that position to go service that person at the physical transaction part of it, out to the houses, out to showing, out to home inspections, out to the getting the keys and the walkthrough. So you need somebody in there, and you and I have talked about it. I like to think of real estate as swimming laps, right? So I use the analogy of you've got 5 laps to swim when you're a realtor. It's lead generation, it's lead conversion, it is the consultation where you secure the buyer or the listing. It is then transacting the home sale. And what the showing partner allows you to do is actually not swim that lap of transacting, which seems crazy. It's like, no, that's what we do. And so a lot of us put our value on that. And really, when you talk to your clients, they don't put the same value on it that you do. They do. And so I use the swimming analogy. And then so the final 5th leg of that swim is going to nurture, serve, give back to that person to bring them back into either somebody who refers you business or does business with you again, right? So we're organizing a movie event for our next quarterly client event. So, you put somebody in that league of the swim. Can you run with this? Can you organize this? So all of these 5 legs can be 5 different people. And I think they should be as you scale. Now, when you start out in real estate, you're going to swim all 5 of those, right? And so one of my favorite analogies is like Michael Phelps, world's greatest swimmer. If he swims the 400 IM and he does every single leg of that swim, he's not nearly as good as when he's 1 of 4, even though he's better than those 3 other swimmers. He'll crush them in all those individual events. But if you get a fresh swimmer on each leg of the relay, it's going to be much faster and better. So we should get to the point where we're just staying in one leg of the swim as we grow our team. That's a different thought than duplicating yourself with buyer's agents who swim all of the legs. Right?
Where do you think people get the limiting belief that their clients only want to use them?
I think because no one's really challenged them, and it's not the status quo. It's not what we do. So it is against the grain because we feel like, well, then what am I doing? Who am I? And I've had people in my own organization say, you don't work on the weekends. I'm like, excuse me? Like, I work a lot. I'm like, we had a 45-minute call yesterday on the weekend, right? I don't physically work on the weekend, right? And that's by design, by having 5 kids. I'm a very involved dad. But do I work? Yeah. If I'm at a ball game for one of my kids, am I taking a phone call? Sure. So we put this value on us, and it just happens. Like when I get a new agent, they're like, oh, I got to be there at the closing table. I have to be there at the home inspection. I have to be there for all these little things because I think they feel guilty on the money that they're making. That's where they provide their value. And so I would challenge that and say your value, especially in the market in the last 2 years, is getting a buyer into escrow in something this competitive. When I sit with a client and say, my job when you're hiring me is to get you any home that you want. If it's your dream home, I'm going to get it for you. And I'm going to make sure you don't overspend by $1. That's really hard to do. And then I'm going to navigate it when there's problems. And I have all the vendors that you need and my negotiation skills. That's what you're hiring me for. So when we present to our clients who we are and where our value is, they're okay with it. They love it. They love it. So it's a total limiting belief. I just think because the industry doesn't teach it. And that's something I want to change. In my next 20 years is how do we change this industry to this becomes the norm? Because we could spend 4 hours on this podcast talking about all the reasons why you want to do a showing partner. There's so many other reasons than just I don't want a team leader to hear, oh, this is just for me to make a big money grab or do more. There's so much more to it. So we can dive into some of that too.
There really is. And I know you and I have had this conversation many times, but it's my clients I have found come to me for consultation and game plan and execution.
Yep.
Consultation.
It's advice and counsel.
The consultation helps me develop the game plan. The game plan, then I have to execute. And they found that whether there's 3 or 4 people involved in the execution, that the one who is probably the best at what they do in their field is probably going to get most of the business, right? Therefore, that person has to have other people execute other legs of the race, like you would say with the swim. I've noticed that by teaching a lot of classes lately, when I talk about some of the stuff, you do get that limiting belief. And I just have to challenge people on I have great clients, like great clients that I've actually never seen their home. And then they'll
Same
be
here.
like, oh, okay. And then I'll say, but yet, for example, George, who referred me his daughter 3 days ago, and I've helped 4 of his friends and family move from Washington over the last 3 months. And he still keeps referring me business, even when I took him through that same system of I don't show you homes. And he thought the process was so good that he went out and
Right.
referred all of his family and friends. So I just really like to challenge people on their limiting beliefs that if you think that you're not going to get referrals because of it, I think you actually are going to get more referrals, because there's people out there that they know so many realtors. And when you elevate yourself to be able to have a consultation and explain this, they're looking at you like, whoa, like you're not my cousin realtor that watches ESPN all day and just pops out and shows 3 homes. Like you legitimately
Right.
run an office. I come into your office. You have, 11 people that work for you. When you say you're going to do something, someone does it. And so I just really want to challenge that limiting belief.
Yeah, I would, what I would say to that is I think what you and I both want to deliver is an amazing experience for our people.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do that through other people. And instead of saying somebody else is going to handle all of it, you still retain control of it when you are using a showing partner, but you're delivering a high quality experience for that person. It's what they really want. It's really what the consumer wants. And so, yeah, I think I'm 100% on when I explain that process, someone saying, great, let's do it. Nobody said, that's just not for me. I was really hoping to wait around for you a couple of days before you could break free to go show me that home. And so that belief can go pretty quickly, I think, once you present it. So,
So you did it through one of your agents, and then you decided to take it on yourself. And that was just through wanting to control more of your experience that you had actually with your past clients.
It was a number of factors. Yes, seeing, the people that I was running with, that I still run with, I'm going to see them in about a month up in Park City. We get together 4 times a year. They were challenging me, like, what's your whole, like, what's your limiting belief? Why are you not doing this? And because these are, people who run, one of them, for example, will sell 1,300 homes this year, has maybe 80 to 90 VRBOs, has a coaching company, has written books and sold 150 houses. Like, it just seems like these Superman numbers. And it's like, you can still do it because your time involvement is so limited. It's like what I'll use like 3 different analogies. The swimming one, I use a dentist one, I use an airplane one, like they're just the dentist for that little moment, but they're not checking you in, they're not doing the cleaning, all of that. And so once you can see that you can just stay in that chair, you can really go do a lot of other things. So I needed a little bit of that to encourage me to do it. And then once I saw it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is easier. I've told people, I think it's easier than listing a property. I would rather take a buyer today than a listing. It's less work for me. It's less work. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, that's how I explain it to people, is you want to make sure that your hub isn't exhausted. So I say, like, when you're a single agent and you have 5 or 6 buyers, right? And now, Saturday, Sunday, Friday nights, like you have 6 different people who got to run out and look at a house. Mm-hmm. Your hub is exhausted. So you almost couldn't take on 15, 20, 30 buyers, because you almost are declining work just mentally. You're not looking for any more work, because you're just trying to service the 5 or 6 buyers you have. And I say, if you've got your hub corrected correctly, if you've got that right, you don't mind that it takes maybe 2 or 3 months to find a buyer at home, because you convert, you consult, you get it out to an agent, they go execute. And it just makes it to where you can actually stay in your lane and lead generate. And so you can say, hey, I've got 25 buyers looking for homes.
It will. I tell people, this will inspire you to go prospect. Once the process becomes so much more enjoyable, it'll inspire you. But to finish that first question, I wanted to do it for myself for the financial reasons. And who's coaching me, they looked at their own book of business and said, wow, I've lost $2 million in commission over the years of outsourcing these. So there's that. And it's not a scarcity. Like, I tell my team, okay, this guy sold 1,400 homes. Can he do them all? No, at some point you tap out, and there's room for everybody. But the leader, should stay profitable, because I cannot tell you how many realtors I've intersected that are broke and they don't know it. And their production is subsidizing the loss of their team, because it's one bank account and all they see is $1.2 million of GCI, $1 million of commission come in, but their tax return is basically their own production, maybe less. Like maybe without the team, they would have made more. That's more common, but we just don't see it the way it's blended together. So it's about really building a foundation of a team that will last forever. So your agents don't have to get a call one day and be like, guys, I'm broke, I'm out of money. How could that be? Well, because I spent 1.3 million to bring in 1.2, and I had to take an equity line out. I sat with somebody who did over 3.5 million of GCI, had to take out a $500,000 loan on a commercial property because it cost them more money to bring that in. So we think we're having all this leverage, but what we're doing is we're just slowly dying. So
it's crazy. And I've seen it in other agents that I've, talked to. And I always say, if you get out a spreadsheet, you've got the front line, you've got the revenue that comes in, you've got all these things that go out, whether it's leverage, brokerage, whatever it may be. And then you've got the end, like the company makes that dollar. Right. And it's like, you've got to figure out from the very first column to the very last column is called running a business. Right. And it's cool. You maybe had 80 deals, 90 deals, 150 deals come through and the revenue's high and that's stage talk. Oh, I made this much in GCI. Cool. Right. We don't see your middle 9 columns on your spreadsheet. So you just say your first column, you don't say the other 7 and give us that total that might be negative 5,000.
Yep.
And so I just like that. It just blows my mind that people will just go out there and do this for like, I guess, fun. I guess I love what I do, but I still, at the end of the day, I'm like, I can't just employ people. I've got to make a profit as well and it'd be enjoyable on my end.
Right. But there's that, I don't know if it's in the E-Myth or Profit First. I'm sure you've read both of those. Like it is about the illusion of if we just scale, profit will show up. Let's just keep getting bigger and bigger. At some point, profit's going to enter into the equation. No, like profit's got to be there first. So really, this is the profit first concept in business applied to real estate. Like, guys, let me keep more profit right now. And so if I were, and so I still want to complete that thought. I keep forgetting. So it was really to do it, to build that base, that foundation. But I want to teach this at a high level for a long time. And I didn't want to be the guy that taught it based on other people's successes. I'm like, you know what? I need to selfishly go do this for a couple of years. Maybe that's all I do it for. So I can speak to it differently. And then honestly, for my own team, I want to raise up a generation of people that graduate. So that's something we need to discuss. Like this showing partner, for me, how I want to run it, it is an internship. It is about getting into real estate. So like right now, all we're kind of talking about is how we win, right? And so I want to pivot to how do they win in that model, the showing partners. So me doing it was the base, get the profit back to where I wanted it to be. And we were still profitable, don't get me wrong, but this ensures even more profitability. And then the graduation. So I kind of want to dive into that. You want to dive into graduation of it?
Let's do it.
Okay. So the ads that I run basically say, do you want to get into real estate, but you're scared of going all commission, which I think is terrible for people to be financially compromised, trying to influence someone's decision. I need a paycheck next month. Therefore, this is the right house for you, even with all of these repairs, because I need a paycheck really bad. That's real estate for most agents. And I don't think that's okay. So how do we change the industry to where we can relax for about 2 years? So my buddy that runs this, what his numbers showed, because he's got maybe 6 years of doing it. If you do this showing partner model, you're the actual showing partner, and you do it for 2 years. By year 3, after 2 years, you now enter the roster as a buyer's agent. Your conversion rate, your ability to do real estate is at the highest level of anybody on their team and their organization. So you spend about a year or 2 just learning, getting good, role playing, practicing, because you're not starving for income day one. And that's really where I think the magic of it is, and where I want to shift the industry is, how do we get people out of real estate school into a salaried position that calms them down, that eases their concerns, so they can become masters at what they do, so we can go into mastery. Very few agents enter into mastery because they're desperate and they're wearing all these hats. So we'll be able to see the conversion rate at a high level when somebody sits in this position. And so we have all of the metrics in place. Like, this is what you need to do. These are the activities you need to do. And we're basically telling them, this is what it takes to be a successful realtor. But when you tell your 1099 independent contractor agent what to do, they're like, pass, I'm not going to do it. Or what's your control? But when they're W-2, you can have weekly conversations around their activities, guide their activities, and make sure there's a balance of training and education and shadowing. And I really just look at it like an internship. And so the goal of my partners now is to be just killer agents in a year or two. And their chance of doing it are exponentially higher than being an agent on a team, just floundering with the worst leads. Right?
Yeah, it's like, they're cutting their teeth so fast in the business. Like, I've got 2 showing partners that just work personally for my, referrals that I get. And one's 26, one's 23. And, just like what they're doing, I'm saying it's like, it's more than most realtors are doing that go into it full time. Right. So I'm like, you guys are cutting your teeth so much quicker. You're seeing conversations, inspections, the Benzers, the appraisals, like, you're going through an internship while getting paid. A year or 2 in, you now have experienced the volume of business that most haven't in a 20-year career. Now you're on my team and you're a buyer's agent, and then you get to now have a showing partner yourself. And so they learn that in our model, which is yours, is, come through, learn how to just do this business. Then you kind of graduate into a realtor, and then you're going to need one yourself. And that's just kind of the model, is everybody just elevates. You go through a process, and then you take over that process, and then you turn around and you just duplicate it.
Yeah. So what I tell people is, this is going deep, not going wide. You go wide with a bunch of new agents, and there's people that do that successfully. Maybe they have 60 realtors on their team, and they average a half a sale per month. One of our good friends, that's about his network. Like, but he has a lot of them. So you can sell 500 homes a year, but you're doing it on like a half a sale. Like, my passion is to see people on my team make 600-700 grand a year. That is not your typical take home for a buyer's agent, but it's like, how do we leverage and go deep through our best talent, supporting them, as opposed to just adding more people? And honestly, like, if you're selling 60 homes a year, how good does it feel to have somebody sit next to you selling 6 homes a year? They're like, this is my equal. Like, so there is that element of it. So to give you some perspective, though, I just looked at my first showing partner that I brought on, and I asked her to give me her first 30 days. She went face to face with 16 different buyers and put $2 million in escrow. First 30 days. Yeah. Come on. Like, you take a buyer's agent on a team, how long does it take for them to do that? To actually open doors for 16 different clients. And so compresses the education into a much quicker, because, right, like, we need 10,000 hours to be an expert. Do you want to do that in 12 years as a buyer's agent, or do that in a year as a showing partner? Now you're really good at what you do.
And it just keeps people in their lane, and you feel so good when you're just in your lane all day. And I was teaching a class last week, and I was answering a question for someone. I said, here's the deal. If you just stop looking at the end commission and you look at your dollar per hour, it'll all start making sense. Meaning, yeah, maybe you started the process and got to the finish line and made X amount of dollars. And yes, through my process, you might have made less at the end of the transaction. But if you were in your office, in your lane, and you made less on the transaction, but more dollar per hour, I don't think enough people understand dollar per hour. They just look at it and say, I want 100% of the commission. And I'm like, no, I'll take less of the commission, more dollar per hour. And that's how the people who are doing this at a higher level keep going higher and higher in this real estate game, is by making more dollar per hour, not just always looking at, am I collecting the most at the end?
Right. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And then for me, I think what really is at the heart of it is, where do you want to be in life? Like, who are you? What were you made for? And where's your skill set? And if you can spend, I tell people, like, go through your day, green light, yellow light, red light stuff. Like, I die when I do this. So, like, if I have to sit down and do paperwork, I'm going to die. But it's weird to think that there are some people that come alive when they do that, right? And I think we have this philosophy or this limiting belief of, like, I hate doing this, therefore everybody else must hate doing this. And that's just not true. And so just identify the things you really love to do, and then how can you spend more time in that? And I think that's how the world benefits. That's what we're made for. I think that's when we come alive. So you and I have talked about it. We both come alive during that consultation. I could do 12 hours of that all day long and the day will fly by. That's what we should be doing. So how do I stay in that seat? Because I'm serving humanity at a higher level. And that ultimately leads to more rewards.
That's what I've talked to my coach about, man, is just, I'm in my zone when I'm consulting. I did it when I have a consulting meeting on my calendar and I'm out of town. I'll do 2 or 3 of them while I'm in Huntington Beach on the phone.
Yep.
I'll just be walking by the beach, 30 minutes, 45-minute calls. And I'm just I get off the phone and I'm so energized. It had nothing to do with, I wasn't like, oh, I'm out of town, I'm having to work. I'm like, no, this is genuinely what I like doing. I'm just in a different atmosphere. So I've told my wife, I'm like, I really just like doing consultations and game planning. And I like different scenery about every 3 or 4 weeks where I'm doing it. It makes me go on vacation. So I've now equated that going on vacation doesn't mean not working. Going on vacation just means doing what I like doing, and it's getting on the phone and consulting. And I just, every once in a while, I like to see something a little bit different than the 101 and the 10 freeway.
So I think you and I are very, very similar. Like, we travel a lot. We're going to spend 23 days on the ocean in Maine. We go to the East Coast almost every summer, and I will do consultations there and will not tell people that I'm in Maine. With this model, it really is irrelevant. And I have to, because I love doing them. I remember last summer, somebody's like, oh, I can't meet until like 7 o'clock at night, Arizona time. I'm in Maine. It's 10 o'clock. I'm like zooming in the dining room downstairs of our vacation home. And it was not hard. It was not work. It was not a grind. It was, like you said, you get energized. So if you can find where that is, then stay there and do it. So I can tell you can't tell you how many homes I've sold on these, and with the model, guys, it's amazing.
And it's so cool because, like, we talked about the hub again. There's nothing about a vacation or 20 days gone that ever stopped the whole engine running, right? Like, if you're just a solo agent and you just decide I want to leave I remember going on 7-day cruises all the time, like 3-4 years ago before COVID, and going on those,
shut it down.
Yeah, you're just like, whoa, like, a referral would come in and you're just like, what do I do? And I felt like the engine was just, it was clogged. And now you can actually, you can get more like hardcore about your personal life and what you really still want to do while you're running a really cool business, because you have like an infrastructure that will support and not just for me, for my team. Like, you keep going back to the agents, and I think we should, is I'm letting them know, like, you guys deserve to live a big life. Like, you guys deserve 7 and 10-day vacations. Like, it's for everybody. We all as a team need to collectively, we're managing a business. We want to live really cool lives. And I think a lot of people sacrifice one or the other. They have a really cool business, terrible personal life, or they're just out there all the time living the greatest free time life, and they have a terrible business. And I'm one that just sits down on my back patio and I'm like, let's challenge this. Like, how do we have an awesome free time life where we get to do what we want? How do we run a super awesome business over here? And I think big questions have big answers. And when you sit down long enough and you mastermind with people, like, you really can figure it out. And let's go into that, because you've used the word, like, meeting with people, masterminding with people. Has that always been in your DNA of building your business?
No, and that's something I wish I had early on, because I have had so many missteps. Like, I'm a good person to mastermind with, not because of my successes, because I have far more failures, like, that I can say, please don't do what you're about to do, because I did it to the point where I did have to cut a check out of my equity line to infuse into the business, because I did exactly what you're thinking of doing. So it really didn't start for me until I got a spark at a conference. I went to my first real estate conference, and I had somebody in my office is like, are you happy doing what you're doing? I'm like, yeah, I'm making a good living. Like, I'm happy. And it just kind of challenged me to do more. And the talk I heard was just kind of centered on kind of like the parable of the talents. Like what were you given and what could you do? And I'm like, you know what? I think I could do more. And it just started with now getting around the right people. And now I've taken it to a level where between my coach and my mastermind, it's probably 50 grand a year that I am spending to be in the right rooms. And that sounds like a lot of money, but it's the return has been enormous. So some rooms you can get into for free, some are very expensive to get into. And that's the biggest game changer. It just challenged the way I thought, what was possible. And then the implementation, like to be able to reach out to somebody and say, hey, now you and I do it, where it's like, hey, I want to add an ISA. Can you send me? It's like, here's everything you need. Here's a contract, boom, boom, boom. Like the speed at which you can grow and implement once you have that sandbox or mastermind, it's massive because you're not having to, it compresses the time for success because somebody who's done it's just going to give it to you. So I wish I had started that way sooner. I mean, Chris, I got to like 40 listings and instead of scaling, it was like, oh, I need to pause my ads. I need to slow down the input because there's too much. Just wasn't thinking the right way at that time.
Yeah. The masterminds to me have been just game changers. And I've always went to conferences but getting in rooms with people who are helping me solve my problems at a high level, like that is now 100%. I realize my network has built my real estate career. Like my whole, like all my friends, families, past clients, they've literally built my whole career. And I'm so grateful and thankful for that. And it was probably about 2 weeks ago, I was sitting down and I said, do you know what? This is no different. Like my community has built my whole entire real estate career. You know, they referred me people, I did good service, and we kept going for 17 years. And now I'm looking at the next 17 years. I'm like, whoa, like the network of realtors that I hang around with are going to scale this. And some of them have seen my blind spots before, and they're going to say, hey, Chris, danger, don't do that. And then also they're going to reach out to me and be like, hey, I want to implement some of the stuff you're doing, and I'm helping them. So I've realized like sitting in those rooms, like our currency is knowledge and we're trading it freely with each other. And it's just super fun because that's what I think most people are missing, is just not going to the classes, the masterminds, or even reaching out with people and asking like, how do I solve this? I look at you and like Kevin and Fred and a few of our other friends as, I kind of make this joke that you guys are kind of like the Uber of my real estate problems. I think like now when I have a problem, I used to sit back and write it down. And for 7 months, I'd research it, YouTube it, think about it, pray about it. I'd gnaw on it for so long. Instantly now, when a challenge comes into my head, I look at my phone and I think, I know about 7 really good, I know 7 people that could probably solve this with one text. And I go straight to who I think's best for it, text them. Usually 3 minutes later, there's a text back and it's like, hey, here's the answer. Or they're sending me to someone else, right? They're like, hey, here's your person, go to this person. Or it's, hey, watch this, let me send it to you later. And I just realized now I'm like, whoa, that used to take me 7 months to figure out because I'm just living in my own world. That's like my coach said, Chris, you're a CEO of a really big company and you were a D student. Like, and you didn't go to college. Like how else would you know how to solve this stuff? And so now I just go and I ask somebody my question, they get back to me. And now I'm realizing it's straight up your compounding time. Like now I'm like, whoa, I have a problem every 4 days in my business.
Right.
And I'm getting answers so quickly that instead of this taking 7 months to figure out, I solved it 2 days. And then when I get into that one, now I'm in the next challenge. And when you can just have people compounding time and solving your problems for you quickly, you're like, this is how you can actually scale at a much quicker rate. So it's the network now of people around you in real estate that I think is going to take you to the next level.
Well, yeah, 100%. You know, the book, Who Not How by Dan Kennedy, if you haven't read that, and if anybody's listening to that, read that book. Like that should be your mindset. And you described it perfectly. Who do I know that's running the showing partner model that can just give me a franchise in a box, give it to me? Who do I know that is doing this? And now, how do I do this? How do I do the showing partner? That how will just take you forever to figure out. You'll just get stuck with it. So I've shifted that very quickly, and I'm generous with my time, but I'm super eager to reach out, say give, but I'm not what they call it, I'm not an asshole where I just only ask, but I give. But if I need something, those same people are like, yeah, here you go, like take it. So that should be a big shift for anybody looking to solve a problem, is who, not how do I solve this problem.
Yeah.
And our group now It's the people you meet and the books you read. And I'm convinced there's a lot of other factors to success, but those two are probably going to be your biggest common denominator. What books are you reading, and who are you rubbing elbows with that care about your success and that have done what you're looking to do? That's who you have to be around. You need proximity. You don't need to know them. You need proximity with them.
Yeah. And I just want the listeners now to like as they hear this podcast, I want to go back, because I think implementation is like the key to everything. And as you're going to go implement, there's always these things that you're going to mess up on, and you just got to fail forward. But I want to take people back to, over a year ago when I heard your podcast. Like, I literally heard the podcast at the gym. Me being who I am, I reached out to you, Dave, right? Yeah. I just reached out to you. I was like, hey, guy can solve my problem. I kind of want to talk to that guy. We talked, and I mean, just my whole entire, like, since that podcast, like, you probably didn't even think going on that podcast that day, like, you 100% changed the whole direction of my business, my profitability, my just like kind of sanity at the time. And It was so powerful because I was probably 36 at the time, 37 when I heard it. And you've now taken someone who is going to be 36 and still going to be in the industry when they're 45. And without that podcast, I'd probably still be out there either showing homes, one, or referring them out to my agents on my team. And then that's fine, but it's hard to hold a high profit margin while doing that.
Right.
And so I just want people, when they hear this, to take that same type of action and just be curious, to lean in and don't challenge the model, kind of lean in, just to go research, figure it out, and execute. And so I also want to explain to the listeners, like, it was 3 days ago, got a referral from a great client of mine, met them at the office. My showing partner comes in with me. I schedule it on their calendar. We sit there. We have a 35-minute consultation. We're going over how this is going to work. The same thing everybody, other realtor probably does. I just leave out this one thing and say, hey, this is a showing partner. They're going to do this job and this is their role. So it's the only different thing you're doing in the consultation is this person is specialized in this.
Yeah.
Last night, they wrote an offer for them. We're under contract today. And so that was 3 or 4 days from meeting to consultation to under contract. And that's exactly what it looks like. It was last week when Steve flew in from Washington to look at homes for 4 days. He looked at about 7 homes every day. My showing partner's out there showing homes while I'm in the office still, running my company, meeting new buyers, consulting other people. And so I really want people to like feel what it feels like to have this in their life, instead of just getting off this podcast and saying, oh, well, that's cool that works for them. I want you to get off and say, like, this is cool for me. Like, I can go live a big life too.
Yeah. And, we didn't dive deep into the compensation and how it works, but just for anyone listening, first of all, I'm happy to do that with anybody. The way I shared it with you, I'll share that with anybody, but it is the most profitable investment of any hire, I think, in real estate versus an expense. Everyone's like, oh, it's a big expense for me. It is an immediate return on investment, immediate. And it's just a win-win. I think it's the biggest win-win in real estate, where I had a showing partner make like $12,000 in commission in 1 month and a space salary. So they're not going to go poor. So we can dive in. Like I said, this could take 4 hours, which we don't have time for. Right.
Yeah. And I think what the good part about this is the goal of this podcast, I think, was for someone to say, like, hey, I subscribe to that model. Like, it's just to hear somebody, what they're doing, and say, hey, I like that and I want to know more. Like, if this fed you, then it's reach out to you, reach out to you, reach out to me. We can get the details all buttoned up for you. But the goal of this was just for you to kind of hear the outer layer of what this looks like. I mean, there's a lot of nuances in between, but
yeah, hopefully it's just a mindset shift. Like, okay, this is an option that I didn't know was out there. Then how do you execute it, and when do you execute it? Right? Like, how do you build that right model? Like, I'm a big believer. I'll only build, somebody wants me to help them build a team, there's only one way I'm going to do it, in a very sequential way. And you can't convince me otherwise, because now I've seen the dangers of doing it other ways. So, there's 5 hires that need to be made in the right order. And you can run a 7-figure net business without ever having a realtor on your team. And that's crazy to think of, but it's totally doable. So,
What's as we're getting off here, what's your just some last advice for some realtors out there? People who listen to this, some are, new, some are super experienced. Like what's your lasting words you want to put on this podcast?
We've talked about it a bunch, but I think there's some humility involved with reaching out to people. And so there's some courage and some humility. And like yesterday, my team wants me to go over a listing, like how I've listed as many homes. And I said, you know what? I just spent $4,500 and I'm going to give you a 6-week course with the guy who is so much better than me at listing. The guy lists 20% of the homes in his market. He's been on 3,400 listing appointments. How about I spend $4,500 for you to go through a series with him and be okay with that? Like that doesn't speak poorly of me, but I'm willing to go have somebody else teach me who's better. So we just got to recognize that maybe we're not the best at what we do, and that's okay, and seek out those that are better and have the courage to ask them. Because I think there are people who love giving back. I love giving back. So be bold and ask people to help you and say, maybe I'm not the best at what I'm doing. Like be open-minded, but people who think they have it all figured out, it can be pretty tough. So be bold and have some humility to say somebody could help me. And that's a fun place to be, I think.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you jumping on the show today. That was
for sure.
That was a lot for people to digest, and it was a good one. So I think in a few months I'll have you back on because you just have a lot of models and systems. That's just one of them. I'm learning now that you have a lot more, but I just super appreciative of your time. And I know this podcast is going to reach out to someone and just change the way they run their business, like you did when you were on that podcast that I listened to. And
it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see whose like life was changed, because it's life changing.
Yeah,
So it's fun, man. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for having me on.
right on, man. Hey, until next time, y'all. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Bye, buddy.